It is getting really close to that time because the 49ers have just 3 practices and 1 preseason game left before the cut to 53 man, and that takes place by Tuesday, August 26th at 1 p.m. Pacific. So, a lot that has to shake out with the 49ers, and injuries play into this as well to open the season. And as far as we know right now, the only preseason injury that would likely kind of project to a player beginning the season on IR would be Kevin Givens and the pectoral, the defensive lineman. And speaking of defensive linemen, of their 90-man roster right now, 18 of those players are defensive linemen because of just the vast number of injuries that they have. And I think by my count, like 7 or 8 of the defensive linemen who are on that 90-man roster are unavailable to practice right now. That includes Yetur Gross-Matos, who remains on PUP, and we'll see if they open the season with him on PUP or not. But for this video here, I'd like to talk specifically about the running back situation and the wide receiver position, because to me, there's a lot for interpretation, a lot that the 49ers have to decide with that. So let's start off with the running backs. And within the last week, the 49ers signed Keyshawn Vaughn. They re-signed Jeff Wilson. So those are 2 guys who have been with the 49ers. Wilson, some time ago, of course, he spent time with the 49ers and then was traded to Miami once the 49ers acquired Christian McCaffrey in that trade. And then Keyshawn Vaughn was with the team's practice squad a little bit last year, also through training camp. But I just posted my 53-man roster projection, the initial 53-man to begin the season, posted that at NBCSportsBayArea.com. And so the running backs and the wide receivers were the positions where I kind of not necessarily struggled, but there's just a lot of different ways the 49ers can go with this. And so what I ended up putting on my 53-man roster projection were that the 49ers would keep 6 running backs. The problem with keeping 6 running backs, and that includes Kyle Juszczyk. So let's just go with 5 halfbacks. The problem with that is right now, the only healthy halfback on their roster is Christian McCaffrey. Now, Isaac Guerendo, I've seen him working out on the side, catching passes over his head. His shoulder seems to be doing much better, and perhaps he's not far at all from stepping back on the field. But I'm thinking with him, they might want to just lock him down and not have him play at all, practice, maybe sparingly, maybe put that, a black colored jersey on him or something that signifies don't touch him, or blue jersey. And quarterbacks wear the black jersey. But Isaac Guerendo has the shoulder. Jordan James out maybe another week with the broken finger that he had surgically repaired. And then coming out of this Raiders game, multiple week injuries for both Patrick Taylor, who really does a nice job as a backup running back, but also a core special teams player. And then Corey Kiner, who I still have making the 49ers initial 53-man roster, but with a high ankle sprain. I mean, that could be something where they opt to put him on IR to open the season. That one looked pretty severe. Looking at Jordan Watkins, the 49ers wide receiver, he is in a spot where it looked like, as far as gradations of the injury, probably not as severe as Corey Kiner's. In Vegas, he was walking around without a boot or anything else. So what Kyle Shanahan said with Jordan Watkins was a 4-week injury. Corey Kiner, that one looked pretty severe, had to get carted off the field. Remember, with Watkins, he didn't even realize he had a high ankle sprain until the next day when he was experiencing some discomfort. They went in and got that thing imaged and saw that. So right now, Guerendo, Taylor, James, and Kiner are unavailable to practice. Some of those guys could be coming back shortly. Guerendo and James likely to come back. So I have the 49ers keeping 6 running backs. Again, 5 halfbacks, 1 fullback to open the season. Kiner now with the injury, I guess it's possible that they could waive him at the cut to 53 and then bring him back to the practice squad. But also, if he's injured, they wouldn't be able to do that. They'd have to waive him injured, and that causes all kinds of issues as well. So let's go on my 53-man roster, which is now posted at NBCSportsBayArea.com. Let's go with the 6 running backs. Now, the wide receivers is an interesting situation too, because there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different scenarios for the 49ers to go with this, because Brandon Aiyuk is going to start the season on PUP. Although if you saw the video of him before the game, running routes, catching passes from the 49ers quarterbacks, and basically going through a practice before the game while he's on PUP, it looks like he's in really good shape and he's making good progress, as we've been talking about all along. I would still think that the 49ers would keep him on PUP to open the regular season, which eliminates a possibility of him playing in the first 4 games of the season. And because the 49ers' 5th game is a short week, a Thursday night game against the Rams, where they do not practice at all in that kind of short week, I wouldn't even give it a thought that he would play week 5. So, that's why probably Kyle Shanahan threw out week 6 as just kind of a for instance, or, a projection of, possibility of when Brandon Aiyuk could be back for the 49ers. So let's just say Brandon Aiyuk starts the regular season on PUP. Then there's the Demarcus Robinson possible suspension. I would say instead of possible, let's just go likely suspension for 3 games, perhaps. So let's just say that the NFL comes down with that suspension to open the season. If they do, then he starts the season on the reserve suspended list. If they don't come down with that suspension to start the regular season, quite clearly, he will be a 49ers player on the 53-man roster. And depending on Jauan Jennings, a starter week 1, along with Ricky Pearsall. So here's a little bit of outside the box thinking. Because the 49ers have some veteran guys who I think are good players. They're guys who have been battling for roster spots in the NFL, but I think all these guys can play and they can be helpful, and in the right roles, they can be contributors, not, 50 snaps per game or anything like that. But let's just say with Russell Gage, Robbie Chosen, and Isaiah Hodgins, those are 3 guys who have NFL experience and can help this team out, perhaps, if there's an injury situation. So my thought would be, and this is reflected in my current 53-man roster projection, is that the 49ers keep 4 wide receivers on their 53-man to open the season. That takes into account Demarcus Robinson on the suspended list, and that takes into account Brandon Aiyuk on the PUP list, where those guys would not count against the 53. So the 4 receivers would be Jauan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Jordan Watkins, and Jacob Cowing. Junior Bergen also in the mix, but I think if it comes push to shove, 49ers would probably go with Jacob Cowing on the 53-man. I think, his work with Brock Purdy in the offseason, along with Pearsall, kind of puts him ahead. And I think he's, just a year further along as a wide receiver. So Bergen, they can bring him back to the practice squad. I don't anticipate that any team would claim him off waivers and then the 49ers wave goodbye and never see him again. So I think Bergen can remain with the team on the practice squad. But the thinking would be, because of the rule, you can have a 16-player practice squad. 49ers can have a 17th guy with the international pathway player. So but let's just say 16-player practice squad. They could have, under my scenario, they would release Russell Gage, Robbie Chosen, Isaiah Hodgins. So each of those guys would be free to sign with any other team. I don't know that any team would sign them to their 53-man roster. There might be some teams willing to sign them to the practice squad. In the case of Robbie Chosen, last year, the 49ers wanted to bring him back to the practice squad, but the Dolphins also wanted him. So what happened? The Dolphins got him. Robbie Chosen chose the Dolphins. If the 49ers can bring back 2 of those 3 players, Gage, Chosen, or Hodgins, then as long as they need a veteran fill-in wide receiver who knows what he's doing and is somewhat reliable, then they can elevate one of those guys or two of those guys for as long as they need to. For instance, if they need one wide receiver to, to get through a game for the first 2 weeks, uh, let's just say that Robinson is suspended for 3 games, or let's go 4 games. They could bring up Russell Gage for weeks 1 and 2. They could bring up Isaiah Hodgins or Robbie Chosen for weeks 3 and 4. And then when Robinson is back, then Robinson takes that place. I don't think the 49ers would keep more than 5 receivers active for any game. So with 4 on the 53 man, Jennings, Pearsall, Watkins, and Cowing, they could bring up a player or 2 at the wide receiver position. 49ers basically have always utilized that rule. The 53 man roster is a bit of a misnomer because it seems to have turned into a 55 man roster because they always seem to elevate a couple of players off their practice squad for games. I would expect them fully to utilize that early in the season. Now, once you elevate a player twice, I believe it's the 3rd time, I have to check that rule, but you can't just endlessly bring up the same player off the practice squad week after week after week after week. I believe it's 2 times or maybe 3 times. And then if you ever want to bring him up again, you have to create a roster spot on the 53. So those are 2 of the things that I think the 49ers have to look into, what the running back health situation is going to be, who's going to be ready at the opening of the season. Does Corey Kiner go on IR to open the season? Does he make the 53 man? And then at the wide receiver position, just seeing how it all shakes out with Demarcus Robinson and his possible suspension, and also which of those veteran players the 49ers would think they can get back to the practice squad and then have them in uniform. And that would be kind of the selling point to Russell Gage, Robbie Chosen, and Isaiah Hodgins is, hey, look, we don't have a spot for you on the 53 man right now, but we can assure you if you come back to the practice squad and you're on the team, you will see game action. You will get a uniform early in the season as the wide receiver position kind of sorts itself out. So those are some of the elements of the 49ers that they have to consider in putting together their 53-man roster. And again, check out all of my projections at the NBCSportsBayArea.com. 49ers do not practice on Monday. They're back at it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the final preseason game Saturday evening at Levi Stadium against Jim Harbaugh and the LA Chargers. And we'll probably see a lot of Trey Lance as well. So thanks for watching, and that is it for now.